This video is brought to you by Envato. Hey guys, we're out here in the beautiful Ozark Mountains, and we're gonna be taking a look at several different drone tips you guys can use to get professional level results. I've been filming with drones for almost 10 years now, and I've been on shoots for everything from TV shows to commercials to documentaries to more local work for local businesses and even things like real estate videos. The tips we're going to cover today are things that I definitely wish I knew when I first started out, and hopefully these tips will help jumpstart you guys if you're just now getting into drones, and if you're a more seasoned professional, I think you'll find a lot of these tips helpful. So let's go ahead and jump right in. And we're going to start out with some general drone basics. These are a few quick lightning round tips that are aimed at more beginners. And the first one is the best way to get drone experience is just to actually go out and fly your drone. You're going to kind of encounter different scenarios and become more comfortable with those. Again, you can watch all the videos you want on YouTube, but actually going out and flying is going to teach you way more than any video can. So that's the first thing you need to do, is just go out and gain a lot of experience flying. Next thing I recommend is using a smaller drone, something like this, like this is the DJI Air 2S. Something of this size is just gonna be a lot more pocketable and easier to throw in your bag and use on different shoots. I've filmed with bigger drones like the Inspire 1, and nowadays I would say 98 or 99% of the shoots I do, I strictly do with a smaller drone. The next tip would be to film in a log picture profile. This is just gonna give you more dynamic range, and then you can use a LUT that's usually provided from the drone manufacturer to convert that footage from log to Rec 709. And that's just gonna make that footage easier to edit and post, and it's just gonna look a lot better. And then finally, turn off any automatic modes that might be on your camera when you're filming. Like you don't wanna have on automatic shutter speed or ISO or anything like that, because you don't want that changing throughout your shoot. You wanna set those manually just so that they're correct and they're not changing on you accidentally. And also turn off any sharpening or denoising that might be on with the drone, because again, that can kind of mess with the footage. And if you wanna do those things, it's just much easier and better to do those in post yourself. That way you kind of have that control and it's not baked into the footage. The next tip is going to be to film better establishing shots with kind of long, broad movements. This may seem kind of boring because you maybe want to do some cool action stuff with your drone, but generally speaking, these long, broad establishing shots like this, these are going to be shots that are going to be utilized in pretty much every project, especially ones that require an establishing shot of a location, whether that be a TV show or a documentary or even something like a music video or a real estate video. These types of shots you're definitely going to be thankful to have when you're doing the edit. And I recommend filming them for about 20 to 30 seconds. Again, these can be something like going forward on the horizon or rising up or lowering down the drone, but really just one directional type movements. Again, these may seem kind of boring, but when you're hired to do drone work, for the most part, these are the type of shots that the client is looking for. And what's great about having a shot that's around 20 or 30 seconds long, even if you only need a shot that's maybe like 10 seconds, it's going to give the editor a lot more options in post to do things like maybe a speed ramp or a jump cut, and even more creative things like cool transition effects. And in my case here, you can see where I've filmed multiple shots like this, and I'm able to overlay them and do some cool creative effects like that as well. And by having the shots be about 20 to 30 seconds long, it's also going to give you plenty of options when it comes to licensing out your footage, whether that be to somebody who contacts you directly, or if you're wanting to sell your footage on a stock website like Envato. Having a shot be this length is going to pretty much cover the basis for everybody that's wanting to license a shot. This video is brought to you by Envato, the ultimate creative subscription. Every type of asset for any type of project and a full stack of AI tools. From music gen to video, image gen to fonts, and everything in between. Follow the link in the description and start creating now. All right guys, the next tip I've got for you may be a little controversial, but again, this is my own personal experience with all of the shoots that I've done. But one thing I actually don't use on my drone is ND filters. Now, it's maybe kind of surprising because, again, you're gonna see a lot of marketing for ND filters and ways you can improve your video footage with your drone. But again, I've told you that I'm usually taking photos and video a lot of times at client shoots. And if I'm out filming something like, in the weather or something like that, where things are changing rapidly, I'm not really gonna have an easy option to switch out the ND filter on the drone. A drone's not gonna work like a traditional camera in the sense that when I'm on the ground with the camera and I can switch out ND filters and tweak settings manually really easily, we're kind of working against the clock with the drone. It's gotta be up in the air, you're fighting the battery life. And when you put an ND filter on your drone, you're effectively stopping down how much light can enter the drone's sensor. And this is good if you're filming video and you want a low shutter speed so you get very natural looking motion blur. But it works against you when you're wanting to take photographs, because a lot of times with drone photos, you want to have a lot of light so you can use a fast shutter speed and make sure you get nice crisp images, because the drone is going to be moving around a little bit, shifting around depending on the weather and factors like that. So the best solution that I've found is actually just to not use an ND filter. And this enables me to rapidly switch between photos and videos when the drone's in the air, for whatever subject I'm taking photos of or video clips of. And so what I've ended up doing is I'll typically apply motion blur in post-production if I need motion blur on footage. Now most drone shots, again, because I'm shooting kind of broad shots, more establishing style shots with slower movements and things like that, motion blur is really not even going to be noticeable at all anyway, because there's not that much of a movement from one frame to the next. Again, there will be if I'm flying close to something like in between trees and things like that, but again, I can apply that motion blur in post-production. And truthfully, I actually believe that the motion blur in post-production looks better than the in-camera motion blur anyway. And a lot of FPV drones where you see some really smooth and amazing motion blur, those are actually utilizing post-production motion blur as well. This is a great segue into our next tip, where I'm going to show you guys now how we can easily add motion blur to our drone footage in post-production. All right guys, so inside of After Effects, I've got some FPV drone footage here, kind of high-speed footage. And you can see this is shot with like an action style camera, so there's not really any motion blur on this. You can see as I go from one frame to the next, we get a little bit of a jump, and that's again because we're not getting any motion blur on this footage. So we want to add some motion blur to this footage, and all we need to do is go ahead and select our footage in the composition. Let's come over to Effect. We're going to come down here to Time, and we're going to select Pixel Motion Blur. And let's go ahead and zoom in here on this rock. And you can see, if I go ahead and check this on and off, we are getting motion blur applied to our footage. If I zoom in even more, we can kind of see a little bit of like sampling. You can kind of see where we get like this repeating thing here. And that's because we're using 5 different shutter samples. If we want to get rid of that, all you need to do is increase this. I recommend a value between 12 and 24. I'm going to type in 12. Keep in mind when you increase this, it will increase the amount of render time, so you may get a little bit of lag when you increase it. So you may just want to increase this right at the very end when you're done working with your footage before you render. And now if I zoom back out a little bit here, we can see we're getting some nice motion blur on this footage. We can go ahead and look at a before and after here. So here's before, and now here's the after with the pixel motion blur applied. If you guys ever need a little more power than pixel motion blur, you might want to check out a third-party plugin such as something like AI motion blur. That's one that I'm typically using a lot these days, and it will give you some great results as well. The next tip I've got for you guys is a nice trade secret of mine, and that's how you can enhance your drone videos using stock footage. All right guys, we are back inside of After Effects. I want to show you 2 different examples here of how we can use stock footage to essentially enhance some drone shots that we're going to be working with. Now this first shot I've got of this sunset on this lake. I'm just going to scroll through so you can see a little bit of the footage, how this moves. One of the things I like to do on shots like this, if I'm editing a client video, if I want to make it a little more interesting, I'll add in a shot of some birds kind of flying across the sky. It's something really small, but it adds a really nice touch to the footage. And on Envato, you can find hundreds of clips with birds flying on an alpha channel, and that's gonna make it really easy for us to add this into our footage. So let me go ahead and show you what I've got here. I've got this shot of a flock of birds, and you can see if I zoom in here, it's really small, but it's on an alpha channel. Go ahead and toggle this on and off so you can see that, so we have a transparent background. And these are just some birds kind of flying through the scene. And you can see they're very simple. If I zoom in, they're really just like one color, but they're gonna be so small on the screen with the way we're adding them into the shot that this is gonna look just fine. And I'll show you a way we can color correct this so it matches the shot as well. You do wanna make sure that the clip you're working with is the same frame rate as the footage you're working with. So in my case, on the sunset footage, it's 29.97, and the flock of birds footage I've got here, I can right click this and go to interpret footage and select main, and I can make sure that's the same frame rate. And if it's different, I can go ahead and change that. So you can see this footage was originally 25 frames per second, and I went ahead and adapted that to be 29.97. That's just one thing you want to be aware of. Go ahead and click OK. So let me go ahead and add this into our composition. And I've got it added in here. If I go ahead and scroll through this, we can see I'm gonna go ahead and scale this down. So I'm gonna select the birds clip, I'll hold shift here, I'm just gonna scale it down and kind of position it up where I want it to be. Now if the birds are gonna fly out of the frame, I wanna make sure it's sticking over the edge of the composition here like that. So you can see that way they can exit, because if they're not, if I have it over here, they'll just be kind of disappearing mid-air. So I want them to fly off the edge of the frame. So I'm just gonna extend this over the edge of my composition there just a little bit. I think having that positioned right there looks pretty good. So the shot will start out and the birds are kind of flying through the sky. And you can see they're already silhouetted quite nicely, so they almost match the shot perfectly anyway. But what we can do here is with the birds selected, I'm gonna come here to Effect, and we're gonna select Generate and Fill. And we're gonna fill them in with a color. And what we're gonna do is select the color picker here, and we're gonna come down here and select something kind of in the dark area, because again, we're creating kind of a silhouette. So I'm just gonna select this silhouette here of the mountains. It's kind of further back in the distance, somewhat around the range of the birds. So go ahead and click that. And now we can see we've essentially applied the same coloring that would be silhouetted on the mountains here to the birds. And now we can say it looks pretty realistic already right there as is. And I'll go ahead and RAM preview this so we can see what this looks like. And now you can see how much that enhances this shot by just adding that little touch of the birds flying through the sky there. All right, let me show you guys another way you can enhance your drone shots with stock footage. Here's a shot I've got of a drone flying over a small town at night. This is one of my shots I actually have for sale on Envato. It's funny because just the other night I actually saw this exact shot used in a TV show. So that was pretty cool to see. A way we can enhance this is by adding in some fog. And what I've done here is I went ahead and 3D tracked this footage using the camera tracker in After Effects and created a 3D camera. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use some stock footage here of a smoke atmosphere. So we have this kind of smoky atmosphere footage. And what I can do is actually on this shot is I've brought in a couple of those smoke atmospheres and I've masked them around. You can see, I'll show you the masks that I created for each of these shots. Where I just kind of masked them out and I made them to be 3D layers. And I've essentially just added those in space. You can see as I move this around, it's just in 3D space, a flat plane. But because it's tracked above this footage, it gives us the effect of fog. And I can come in here and I can actually manipulate the mask that's on the footage and you can get different effects. And I can duplicate it. And just create some really cool looks and kind of position them differently in Z space. And you can see here's another shot I've got here above a semi-truck where I did the same thing. I can select all the fog layers here and turn them off. And you can see here's what it looked like before, and now here's what it looks like after. We can go ahead and preview that. You can see the fog layers layered above that. And with these fog layers, I've just applied them in a screen blending mode, and that's how I'm kind of getting that transparent result. And maybe want to adjust the opacity of them as well to get more realistic looking results. But this is something I highly recommend experimenting with as well, and it's something I very commonly do to enhance drone shots, again, using something like stock footage. The next tip I've got for you guys is how you can quickly convert all of your log footage for your clients using Media Encoder. All right, guys, so inside of Adobe Media Encoder, we need to import our video clips. So I'm gonna select all these drone clips that I filmed in a log format. I'm just gonna select those and drag them in. And that's gonna go ahead and import all those clips. And now that we have all those clips imported, over here you can see I can select a preset. And what I actually want to do in this situation is on this first video clip up here, I'm actually going to click on the preset we have selected. And that's going to open up the export settings so we can go ahead and tweak whatever preset we have selected. But what we want to do is come over here to where it says effects. We're going to click that. And if we just scroll down here, you're going to see we have the option for Lumetri look or a LUT. We're going to go ahead and check this on. And now we can apply a LUT to this, which essentially our correction LUT for our log footage. Because in some cases you may want to send a client the footage that's already been converted from log to Rec 709, so it's easier to edit with. So I'll just go ahead and select the LUT here. And that'll open up the File Explorer, so I can go ahead and select the LUT. Again, this is one I downloaded from DJI's website for my specific drone. Go ahead and click Open. And now we can actually see that conversion reflected here on our footage. You can see if I check this on and off, that's the flat log footage. And now that's been converted to be Rec 709. And if I want to now, I can go ahead and save this out as a preset and I can easily apply it to the rest of my footage here. So up here under preset, I'm gonna go ahead and click to save this as a new preset. This is an Apple ProRes preset, what this is working off of. So I'll just add a dash to the end of this and name this DJI Rec 709 for my specific drone. Go ahead and click OK. And go ahead and click OK. And now underneath the presets here for all my other clips, I can select all of those. And go ahead and toggle this down. And now I can go ahead and select the preset that I saved here. Go ahead and click that. And that's gonna apply that to all the clips that I have selected here in Media Encoder. And then I can go ahead and select play, and that will go ahead and convert all those clips and apply that conversion LUT to all of those, essentially automating that entire process. Last thing I want to mention very quickly here is that bitrate, when it comes to drones, is just as important as frame rates and resolution. I think we've all probably had a cheap camera that maybe says it films in 4K, then when you go back and look at the footage, it's really muddy, and that's because that camera probably had a very low bit rate. And when you're filming with a drone, you're filming a wide area of things, everything's kind of moving through the frame, and you want to retain as much detail as possible, and that's why it's really important to have a high bit rate. A lot of drones nowadays will have a bit rate around 100 to 150, but some of them may be much lower than that, so you may want to look at a drone that has a higher bit rate if you're wanting to get the best quality image from your drone. And this is also true when you're exporting out your drone video. You want to make sure it's at a medium to high bit rate. That way it kind of still retains that detail, and then whatever video platform you upload it to, more compression is going to occur, and that's just something that's just going to happen whenever it's playing it back online. But you don't want to sell yourself short by compressing it and ripping away all the detail before you even upload it online. All right, guys, thanks for joining me out here in the Ozark Mountains. Hopefully you picked up a few tips for your own drone videos. Be sure to check out the other tutorials that we have on our channel, and we'll see you on the next one.